Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest NBS Marketing Masterclass for manufacturers. This is the latest in a series of marketing masterclasses that we've been doing, and today I'm delighted to welcome Liam and Ros from Think Tank, who are partnering with us on this, and I'll introduce in just a moment. Today's session is all about life beyond cookies. So this is quite an interesting and detailed subject, and actually it came about off the back of our last webinar where we were looking at social media, and we had numerous questions in around cookies and what the changes were happening in the world of cookies, what that meant for manufacturers and what they should do about them. So we're going to be getting into the detail of that in a moment, and Liam and Ros are going to be taking us through it. So as I said, Liam, Ros, delighted to welcome you along to today's session. Liam is MD at Think Tank, and Ros is head of digital media. So they're real experts in this space, and will be telling us everything that we need to know about cookies and life beyond them and what that means. So I'm personally looking forward to learning quite a bit, and I'm sure some of the viewers that we've got signed in will be looking forward to it as well. So just before I hand over to the Think Tank guys, just to kind of introduce and explain why are we covering this and where does it fit with all the other webinars and the marketing masterclasses that we're doing at NBS. Probably the best way for me to explain that is just to redraw your attention to what we call our specification marketing cycle. So if you haven't seen this, this is a little tool that we put together to just map out the kind of the process that specifiers use when selecting manufacturers' products, and how manufacturers need to set up and align their marketing strategies to all the different parts of that process. And as I said, we've covered various topics that fit at various different stages along this journey, and we've got quite a few more to come. But this one today is really obviously very relevant in terms of digital marketing, reaching specifiers, personalization, and targeting across the cycle, really. So that gives a bit of context to where it's all going to fit. So as usual, everyone who's attending, microphones are muted, but please do ask questions. We've already had a few in advance that we'll cover in the end. And if we can't cover them on the call today, we'll aim to follow up with answers at the end or afterwards. So yeah, that's it from me in terms of introductions. I've got a few things to mention at the end, but without further ado, I'll hand over to Liam and Ros from Think Tank, who are going to take us through life after cookies. Over to you guys.
Thanks, Robin. Thank you for that. Ros, if you're going to share the presentation, and we'll get going.
Okay, just sharing now.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, so as we said, we're going to be talking about cookies today. It was one of the things that came up on the last webinar that I spoke on and touched on in that. There was lots of questions around it afterwards, so really interested to look at in a bit more detail this time. So we're going to be looking at a variety of different topics, and hopefully some examples as well to give people an idea of the impact of the changes that have been going on from a variety of different sources around cookies, and how that's going to change the way that we can do our marketing going forward. So we're going to firstly have a quick look at what are cookies. So we're going to look at the different types and uses just to set the scene, and then look at cookie policy. What is required in the UK websites and by when, because there's changes afoot. Why there's a problem with third-party cookies in particular, what happens to that data without third-party cookies. So if you don't have them on your site anymore and you're not allowed to use them, what happens to that data? And then who's affected by a lack of third-party data? And then what we can do about it. What can we do about to resolve the problem as we go forward? So I'm going to hand over to Ros to take us through the next few slides. Over to you, Ros.
Thanks, Liam. So yeah, we'll just get straight into it and talk about the detail of the cookie, and it all stems from GDPR and PECR, which is the Privacy of Electronic Communications Regulation. So according to the ICO, since Brexit, so since June, all UK websites should comply with the information requirements of that PECR regulation. So what that means is that you should make sure that all users of your website see clear information about the cookies that you have on your website on the first visit to their website, to your website. So the reason why we should be doing this is because previously, when GDPR came in 2018, lots of sites used a cookie policy that allowed users to opt out. Now, the focus has completely changed. What we're supposed to be doing is opting in to using these cookies. And I'm going to talk to you about what each one is for and why we have it. So by telling our users that we're using these cookies, the ICO think this is going to give increased awareness and control to your users. So this is going to assist you in getting valid consent from that user to engage with them on and on after they've been on your site. So you should also explain the purposes of each cookie and what it's for. Is it for user experience, or is it for another reason, for tracking? And how long these cookies last. You can go into your settings and remove all those cookie settings on your browser, but most people don't do that. So that's why this cookie policy is really important. And the ICO recommend that you use a cookie policy provider because they really make sure that you are compliant. So let's talk about these three different types of cookies. So the first one are session cookies or temporary cookies. So these are just whilst you're on that particular site, and they disappear as soon as you leave that site, that session. And they just help you with your user experience on the site at that time. Then there are the permanent cookies. Now, these are things that hold your data relating to that particular site. So it'd be your login details or currency that you're working in, or perhaps it's a flight booking site and it remembers that you want to fly from Heathrow and not Birmingham or San Francisco. So they're all under legitimate interest, that it helps you in your user experience of using that site. So they fall again under legitimate interest, that these cookies are helping the user with their particular journey on your site. And then there are these third-party cookies. Now, these are placed by a third party to get specific information from the users on your site. So they're going to find out the demographic, they're going to watch the user behavior, they're going to track the spending habits. And these are the ones that are a bit more stalky, and they're used across multiple websites. And so what they're doing is building up a complete history of your browsing data. So they can harvest all that information together and then they sell it to advertisers. Because at the end of the day, the advertisers want to direct relevant ads to relevant people in a timely manner. So that is why they're gathering this data. But these are becoming the problem.
And I think, Ros, it's just interesting just to mention for those that haven't come across it, the term, but legitimate interest is a term coined within GDPR, and it basically says that you can assess whether the keeping of data, the holding of data, data processing of data is allowed under legitimate interest, and it tends to be within the B2B marketplace. It's those individuals that are in businesses that have an interest in the services or products that you're offering, and you're able to say, okay, there's legitimate interest there because they need to know about my products and services to be able to do their job. So yeah, as long as you're capturing things like business email addresses, not personal email addresses, and you can show that the processing of that data is of legitimate interest to the user, then this is where this sits. It's really important when you're doing those sorts of things to make sure you do those assessments.
Yeah, definitely. So this problem with third-party data, the third-party data, the cookie blurs the line between what we as a user assume is a two-way relationship between me and that website. But with third-party cookies, you're no longer anonymous because this cross-site tracking breaks down that wall. Now, Google accounts for 64% of global website traffic, and it's announced that it's not going to be supporting third-party cookies from actually 2023. And in the meantime, they are looking for an alternative to what they're going to swap for third-party cookies. They're actually closing down this marketplace for a lot of users that use it for delivering advertising, and then putting Google back in the center of this. So it's very interesting changes afoot. So who uses these third-party cookies? Who places these third-party cookies on sites? So all the social media platforms, so LinkedIn, Facebook, they use pixels, but those pixels, they also deliver first-party and third-party cookies. Now, this allows the platform to sell their advertising, and that's based on their ability to get highly segmented audiences, so they can deliver advertising to the right person at the right time. Google.
And Ros, just
yes.
Sorry to interrupt, just in terms of what an actual cookie is and a pixel,
yes.
Effectively it's just a little bit of code that gets deposited on the user's machine, is that right?
It is, yes, it is. Yeah, so you can actually remove them by going into your Chrome settings, and some browsers now aren't actually allowing third-party cookies anyway, so Mozilla, Firefox and Safari don't support them anyway. But you could, if you're using Chrome, you can go into your settings and remove them as well.
Yeah.
So yes, Google Chrome, that's the third-party cookie, and Google itself as a platform, it offers the most highly targeted and segmented audiences for ads and all of its platforms. So things like Google Search ads, Google Display, YouTube. Shopping, it's really important for them. So to find a solution to it is probably their #1 priority right now. And then programmatic advertising platforms. So companies like AdRoll or SharpSpring, Taboola, they fill the display network or anything that has AdSense or YouTube or TV with relevant ads to the relevant people at the right time. And that's based off that third-party cookie data. And then ad tech platforms like Global Web Index and Pollen, they use third-party cookie data to deliver a better product to its customers. So for example, Global Web Index is market research. So it has a lot of primary data from its panel audiences, but it supports this market research that it's gathering through user behavior, through this third-party data. And without it, maybe the intelligence that they're producing won't be as informed in the future, because they won't have access to geolocation or spending habits. So how does this third-party cookie work? How is it infecting us all, and how is it endemic? For example, here's an example using WhatsApp. So we all know WhatsApp's owned by Facebook. So perhaps you're shopping for a new car, and later that day, so you've been looking at all the car manufacturers' websites to see if there are any new models coming out, or are we going to go electric, or are we going to stick with petrol? Then later that evening, you're watching catch-up TV. And then every ad, because sometimes you have to watch the ads that are coming up, is another Volvo car, or it's a Ford. Oh, how insightful. How did they know I was looking for a car? And the next day, you're on YouTube and you're looking for a webinar to get some information on something, perhaps a cookies webinar. And then the first thing that happens is what car comes up is that ad that you can't skip, asking you to subscribe to their channel. Again, how can that be? And then later that day, you just go onto Facebook. And then the first thing you see is a beautifully shot video of an Audi driving along a beach. And this is because WhatsApp is using your data to populate the relevant audiences that it's then going to sell to advertisers. And then these advertisers appear across the multiple sites and they take your data with them. And that is breaking your confidentiality. So let's talk about your confidentiality and the privacy law. We all know about GDPR. We all went through the pain in 2018, but it was interpreted very loosely. And cookie policies were adopted and adapted so that users could opt out rather than opt in. So since Brexit, the PECR, it's governing the use of our personal data for marketing communications, and that sites can set cookies for legitimate interests, as we mentioned before, but really, we absolutely cannot assume that users will opt out. They have to opt in. So the message that we want to get across from this webinar today is that you should check your cookie policies straight away, because you have to make sure that that option to opt in is there rather than it being assumed. And the ICO that controls this privacy law, they're getting very hot on privacy breaches, as they are in the EU. And the first thing they're looking at is the cookie policies. And the fines that are out there are huge. I mean, they're going against the big tech giants at the moment, but there are privacy pressure groups out there that have developed bots that can automatically assess how compliant your cookie policy is and then report you to the ICO in an automated fashion. So I think the main takeaway from this is check your cookie policy and make sure that you are compliant. So when these third-party cookies go away, what are we going to do? So we rely on data for that insight to see, what our efforts are doing in terms of marketing. How are we delivering contact forms or sales from our websites? And without that third-party data, with the chunk of that intelligence that we're going to be missing, as I mentioned, Google's working on a new solution, and it's looking at machine learning to anonymize user tracking, so that products like Google Analytics are still giving us this information that we need in this post-cookie future. So Google have developed, their project is called Google Sandbox, and they've announced these flocks, which are federated learning of cohorts. Now that means nothing to anybody I know, but what essentially it means is that rather than tracking user behavior through third-party cookies, it's putting Chrome at the center of this. So all the advertisers would have to come to Google to get this data rather than third-party cookies like Facebook or LinkedIn. So instead of using your browsing history to show you ads, flocks work by categorizing you into similarly interested users, and then gives each of these flocks an identifier. So if you're a marketer, you would target particular flocks. So it's still data harvesting, and it's still based on browsing history, but rather than sending it to third parties through cookies, the browser gathers the data and adds you to the cohort. And so this cohort will be constantly changing based on your browsing behavior. And Google claim that this is 95% as effective as third-party cookies, but there's a huge amount of resistance to flock, because A, it's putting Google at the center of it, and secondly, it's still tracking. So as much as they say it's anonymous, it possibly isn't. So we're waiting for news on the next steps. So what do we do about marketing without that data, and is it really going to impact us? Because we still have data that we receive from those users who accept tracking under that first party data collection. But recently, Apple brought about a new operating system for its mobile devices, and it came in May. And this new operating system updated on phones. And the first thing that it allowed people to do was a pop-up to say, do you want us to stop tracking data across sites and devices? And so everybody said yes. And so in the week after it, Facebook recorded a 25% fall in its audience figures across the board after that. So that's saying, you know, 25% of Facebook's audiences are using an Apple device or had agreed to this pop-up. So marketing without that data from third-party cookies means that you cannot re-engage with a user from your website unless they have explicitly requested that contact. So this impacts a few things that you may already be doing or things that you may not have done, but things like retargeting. So a lot of B2B companies I work with, we rely on this reminder mechanism to retarget visitors to our site, because we want to warm them up. You know, we want to introduce them to our site, let them know what we do and how we can help them, and then they go away, and we want them to come back to us. So the next time they complete a search with those particular keywords, then using retargeting, we then can appear to them straight away. So we won't have the facility to do that in the future. Our audiences. So we build lots of lookalike audiences in LinkedIn and Facebook, and we use these to deliver highly targeted ads to the people that want to hear about this product or service. And without this third-party data, these audiences are really going to shrink or be not as relevant. And then it really impacts ad tech ads. So using platforms like Taboola or SharpSpring, they rely on that third-party data to collate these relevant audiences, but they are just going to shrink, and they won't be able to charge as much as for their service, because they at the moment will not be able to deliver such a targeted experience.
I think it's useful to say, Ros, as well, that we have clients that global clients that we run digital campaigns for, and some of those clients operating in countries such as Germany, where the rules have been much more stringent than they have been in the UK. We have seen considerable drop-offs of data being able to for us to understand the digital campaigns and what's happening with them. One client in particular, I think we lost something around about 92% of all traffic as soon as they implemented this opt-in only cookie banners, and that means that one, you can't do that remarketing activity, but two, you also can't measure your conversions against the marketing you're doing and a variety of other actions within different platforms, in the Google Ads and things like that. And it is quite extreme. It is overnight. As soon as you put the banner is there, bang, it blocks it, and that's it. And Germany in particular is a very stringent, and as Ros mentioned, these bots are going around checking websites in Germany specifically, and they are then reporting those companies, and it's a real problem that you've got to watch out for. But the impact upon the data that we have in the future is quite extreme, and it happens overnight.
Yeah, it is. And I suppose that's it. You know, we have to adopt best practice. As a marketing agency, we tell our clients, you know, best practice is that you have to adopt this cookie policy on your site, because you know, the ICO will be after you, definitely. So we need to think as marketers, what are we going to do to engage our audience on that first touch, and how are we going to ensure that we can that our users will share their data with us. So we have to build content for our sites and for our organic social that really connects with users. So again, being timely and relevant and also measurable. And marketers have developed new ways of getting relevant users to share their data with them. And I found a poll by an ad tech company called Next Tech AR, and they'd canvassed 1,000 US-based publishers, so those sites that are churning out news or articles for free in return for data. And what they're doing, because they can't sell their data anymore because those third-party cookies won't be supported, and what they're doing in light of these privacy changes and how their marketing plans have changed, and how they're now putting engagement and data sharing content into their mix. So, for example, newsletters, 71% of them are already using them. But they're also planning more, and 31% are, either using them already or preparing to use newsletters, so that users sign up and allow the publisher to connect with them. And then there's signing on with an email. So again, another way of, you can access this information, but you share your email with us. And then your email can then go into their nurture programs, and then they can then share those email lists with relevant other sister publishers, as long as they've opted into that. Then paid subscriptions. So, for example, in the UK, like The Guardian, at the moment it's for free, but in the future it will go to a paid subscription, like the Times, because they can't rely on advertising to support that free content. And 50% of them are already on a paid subscription, but 27% are planning to. And then using tools like special offers, buy one get one free, things like that. And then things like widgets, or games or surveys or some kind of quiz, some way to interact with the user so that they share their data in order to extract something from that site. So it might be a quiz to see how cookie compliant are you, and then engage with that user, so that those website owners can start building a real insightful list of the customers that are engaging with them and marketing to them.
I think you may have noticed over the last couple of years that as you start to, as you've gone through various e-commerce sites for clothing or whatever else it might be, that all of a sudden you started to get an awful lot of pop-ups offering you discounts if you subscribe to their e-newsletters. And that wasn't because they liked you and wanted to give you a discount. That was because they want your data. They want you to sign up. They want you to be able to market to you. And the reason for that is because they're not going to have this third-party cookies to work with in the future. So those discounts that are popping up all the time are there to get you to give them your data, so it becomes first-party data for them. And one other element on that actually as well is that the other trend has been that you can't get through to a website now unless you accept or decline the cookie policy. And again, that's one of those things where it's kind of, people just click and say, okay, yeah, fine, whatever, I just want to get on the site, but it's grayed out. And that's something that's still being looked at by the ICO as to whether that actually is preventing too much of a barrier, and it's influencing the individual to actually opt in rather than having the option to opt in. So there's that sort of thing is being looked at still. Whether that will be still allowed in the future or not is up for is under question.
Yeah, I think the ICO are going to be really hot on that, because I've noticed myself just in my own personal use that it's actually the way that some cookie policy banners are set up. It's just so easy to opt in and so difficult to opt out. So I think these privacy pressure groups will be singling out the sites that aren't making it easy for users to opt out, definitely. So on to hand over to Liam now to talk about marketing tactics and how we've been working with our clients on developing new ways of extracting that data.
Thanks. Many thanks, Ros. Yeah, so I mean, the content element of marketing has become something which has grown significantly over recent years, and that element and the and things like promotions, etc., gamification, become really, really important, because what we need to do now in terms of being able to communicate with audiences is to start delivering that first party data. So a lot of the campaigns that we're running now are there to provide engagement for the user, so that they're engaging with content, they're engaging with webinar, they're engaging with promotions, whatever else it might be, so that there is an opportunity to capture that data. Because as we go forward and we lose this third party data and the cookies, we're not the targeting of digital display advertising and other advertising is going to diminish, because the information won't be there. It's not being captured anymore. So it's really important that when you get somebody to your website, you keep them on the website and you capture their data in terms of capturing the information, so that you have something then to actually communicate back to them. And whether that's then through remarketing, or whether that is through marketing automation, utilizing programs, platforms such as HubSpot or something like that, where you're able to go back out and communicate to them based upon what they've viewed within the website, because that's going to be really important. And the other side of this then, of course, is where the other first party data sits. So the platforms such as Google, until they introduce what they're going to introduce, without the third-party cookies, that display advertising targeting becomes almost impossible. So it's really, really difficult. The places where there is first-party data where you can still reach your audiences is, of course, trade media and platforms such as NBS, where you have that, they have first-party data, and you can communicate through to your target audiences via that digital route. So where over the past 5-10 years, those publications where they've moved online have struggled quite often in terms of delivering what someone like Google can offer or Facebook can offer in terms of response to advertising. Actually, they start to come back into their own, because they give you a very clear, defined audience that you can now reach, whereas some of these other platforms, until they find a workaround, won't be able to do in the near future. So really importantly, it's about making sure that when people reach your website, you are capturing them in that respect. You're giving them something that's of interest to them. You're giving them something that they feel is of value, and that they then are happy to provide their data to engage with you on that basis. In the knowledge that you're going to communicate with them. You know that it's all open and everything else. It's nothing deceitful or anything like that. It is open, and you're asking them to tick boxes still to agree to it, etc. But the value for you is that data capture now, because the third-party cookies aren't going to allow you to reach out to those individuals without that in the future. So, that's it. I think we're on to questions from there, Robin. I think hopefully that gives people a really good insight to what's happening with cookies and where that's going in the future, and some hints and tips of what you need to do now.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Liam and Ros. That was incredibly insightful, and like I said, I certainly learned a lot from that, and I'm sure the audience did as well. We've got a few questions actually that have come in advance from some attendees, so I'll get onto them in a moment. I had a quick first question though, actually, which is obviously it's kind of, it's potentially Google that's driving quite a bit of this change in terms of moving away from third-party cookies. What's their motivation for doing that, and why would they be thinking of that right now?
Well, there's the battle against Apple, because Apple's always been about privacy, and Apple has never been in the advertising game. It's never sold advertising space. So they're allowed to corner that market on privacy. But you know, they have a large following, and that sort of that Apple's ecosystem versus Google's, I think will impact. And so Google will realize, you know, the direction of travel because of GDPR, and because, you know, it's you know, global. It's a global thing. It's a global theme, and they have to get on board. But in so doing, they have, by announcing that, you know, in their 65% market share of global website traffic, that they're turning off third-party cookies and delivering something else, they've actually just boosted their share price, because all those advertisers are going to be coming back to Google to find out what the solution is.
Yeah, I'd seen a bit of that in the press. So, you know, Google can talk nicely about caring about users' privacy and so on, but in the background, it's going to have the benefit to them of pushing a load more ad dollars and pounds directly into their sphere from others. Interesting. Okay, if you wouldn't mind, stop sharing, Ros, and I'll just share my screen. We'll cover off some of the questions that we've got from some of the attendees. So that should be on now. So the first question, really, in terms of construction manufacturers then, and making this relevant for them, first question, what would you advise a manufacturer should be their kind of next steps in terms of mitigating for any loss of data and planning ahead to making sure that they're dealing with this change?
Liam, do you want me to?
Yes, I can pick that up, absolutely. So one of the key things firstly is to review your website, review the policies on your website, etc. Make sure that you're compliant to start off with. The next thing is then about thinking about how you can generate first-party data. You need to make sure that you're capturing that data, as we mentioned before, and making sure that you can utilize that in the way that is going to be right for your business and for your customers. At the end of the day, it's about developing your website and the interactions that your potential customers have with you in a way that will provide them with something they want to engage with, something that they're going to be happy to engage with you and provide you with information around, so that you can build that data prior to losing this opportunity around third-party data, and providing you then with the ability to go and communicate with them directly. One of the big things around GDPR and how it was talked about initially was that it shouldn't be seen as a bad thing for marketers. It should be seen as a good thing, because if people are willing to provide you with their information, then they are interested in you. So your data becomes more valuable, it becomes more relevant, and it means that you're not wasting money on trying to target people who aren't interested in engaging with you. However, you know, at the end of the day, people still have to tick a box to agree, and a lot of people certainly don't, and a lot of people now, because of the changes in cookie bans, etc., they're opting out immediately. They're not opting in, so that will have a big impact upon that. So you've got a short window really to be able to build your own data and to build a valuable piece of data that can be used going forward.
I think they should also audit what they're doing right now, because, you know, if they're getting a lot of website conversions through retargeting or through you know, ad tech measures, then they need to have a look and say, okay, how are we getting our leads on our website? What kind of marketing are we doing to drive this? And think about how can we do it differently that doesn't rely on third-party data. I think that's a really crucial thing, because once it's off, it won't work again. So we need, I think that everybody should definitely just have a look and see, you know, what ad campaigns you're running and what data they're using. Yeah,
definitely. So a big focus on providing the best quality of information in the right places, and making sure that the strategy isn't reliant on tons and tons of third-party data. Very interesting. We mentioned it briefly on the call. The next question someone's asked was around Brexit, the B word, and what influence this has had or may continue to have on regulation around this.
Yeah. So with Brexit, of course, we in essence came out of the rules and regulations within the European Union around data. GDPR was adopted into the UK, and the PECR, if I've got the right order of the letters there, is the UK's equivalent of that for digital. What it means is that the UK now has control over over the legislation around data. And there is a new head of the ICO, the Information Commissioner's Office, who came in recent weeks. And he's been indicating that he's going to be reviewing the use of banners and cookie banners within websites. A little bit difficult to know which direction that might go at the moment, but there's been some word about that. Is it really necessary to have it on every single website, the cookie banner popping up all the time? And it's destroying the user experience. People are getting fed up with having to click on cookie banners, etc. And there's sort of talk around, okay, maybe we only need it on certain sensitive websites where the data collection would be sensitive. So there may be a change in what happens post-Brexit. Seems to be possibly a loosening of the rules that could come through from the ICO over in the next few years. But at the moment, we are in the same situation as we would be if we were still in the European Union. But there is some reviews going on at the moment.
Great. So yeah, watch this space and continue to follow this topic. Okay. And next question was around international websites. So a lot of our manufacturers that attend these sessions and other companies as well may have UK sites, but may have regional sites in Europe and beyond as well. So what would you advise them to do in terms of managing this across those?
Well, I think if you have various websites that are appearing, in the EU, the US, UK, then you have to adopt best practice. So best practice for the territory you're in. I mean, the EU and the UK at the moment are sort of hand in hand. And the EU, as you saw from previous slides, they're very hot on privacy. So making sure that you adopting that best practice with your cookie policy first and foremost, and then if you're adopting that best practice, then you shouldn't have any concerns. But it's just making sure, doing that audit, belt and braces, making sure that because you don't want to have a fine.
The other side of that is you need to think about cross-border data as well. You need to think about the movement of data from one country to another. So, for example, it's not allowed to move data from Europe to the UK anymore, and vice versa. So you need to look at the individual countries that you're working within to see where your data sits, and then how that data is used going forward, and how it's transferred potentially between your own businesses, even across border. It's something to watch out for, because you could get into trouble if, for example, you move your data from Ireland and you then start to do email campaigns out of the UK using the Irish data from a UK base. In reality, the movement of that data from Ireland to the UK is not allowed. So that's something to think about.
Brilliant. Okay. And the final question that we had in advance was around policing, and how is cookie policies and third-party data, how is that policed now, and how might it be policed in the future?
So I think we mentioned briefly earlier about these bots that are going around looking at websites and seeing what people's cookies policies are and whether they're adhering to the regulations. We've had a client in Germany that on their website they didn't have the correct details, and they were stung with this. Somebody reported them, picked them up and reported them, and they had to deal with that locally for their website. It is something to be aware of. The majority of these bots will be targeting the more higher profile websites initially, but as they're automated, they could hit anybody's website in reality. Once you get that report, then you need to do something about it. And the fines can be very large. I think it's a couple of percent or 1% or something like that of your turnover globally that could be the fine, for example. So if you have a large global turnover, the fine could be quite significant for breaching these regulations. So yes, it's the organisation though then that we've mentioned as well, the ICO, is the organisation in the UK that will police the UK, and they will also look at this. But again, generally that they're going to be looking at the more high-profile websites. They're not probably going to look at construction manufacturers' websites at the moment, for example. But you may get picked up by one of these bots, so it's really important just make sure that you are looking at best practice within your site.
Yeah, I agree, and also right now, in the UK, it's down to the user if they feel that their data is not being used, it's not being treated confidentially, for them to report that site to the ICO. Absolutely,
absolutely. Wow, that was incredibly insightful. Those are the questions that we had. I would encourage anyone who's watching, if you've got further questions, please do submit them either now or after the event, and we'll do our best to get back to you afterwards, because that was absolutely fascinating. I think the main couple of big things to take away, absolutely, that manufacturers should continue on focusing on kind of quality and reaching audiences in the right way with a really strong message and very high quality content, but also that this is an area that continues to develop, and it's something to keep a close eye on and follow, and make sure that you're complying with the rules and so on, and you're aware of what you're doing. Absolutely. So that's a nice segue into a couple of things that I was going to mention. Thank you so much, Ros and Liam, for all of that. I was going to just mention, for any manufacturers on the call who aren't aware, NBS Source is our the NBS platform for specification and product information from manufacturers. And as Liam kind of touched on earlier on, this is absolutely a great way to kind of get in touch with specifiers on a first party basis, if you like. So specifiers are in the world of finding products for and specifying products for their projects. This is a great way to get in front of them and build direct relationships that certainly don't rely on any third-party information or anything like that. So if anyone's interested in finding out more about Source, take a look at the NBS website. You can find out everything you need to know on there, and get in touch with us for a demo. And some more news really to share from NBS. We've covered this a bit recently, but in case anyone didn't know, we're now working in partnership or as sister companies with Glenigan. Glenigan one of the best provider of project data, and provide data on thousands of construction projects, which is rigorously researched and so on. And again, a great source of kind of first party information about exactly what's going on in the construction industry. And we're working together actually to provide a really, really powerful journey for manufacturers between the kind of process of finding projects and opportunities through to the specification and into actually getting your projects into the job. So please do have a look at that. We've got a dedicated webinar about that on our website, so please do take a look. One more thing to mention is off the back of that, so we're actually working with Glenigan to deliver a survey of construction manufacturers and how they go about doing their marketing. So the Construction Manufacturers Marketing Index, we're looking to get input from as many construction manufacturers as we possibly can. What we want to do is take a really good temperature check of how the industry is going about doing its marketing, what channels you use, what's effective, what's not effective, how you budget for it, how you measure it, how you track it. All of that information doesn't exist at the moment. We're looking to index that and then to share it back with you, the industry, to give you that information, not just about you, but you'll be able to compare yourself to the wider industry and your competitors as well. So anyone who fills out that survey, if you are a manufacturer, please get on the link below, the nbs.com/marketing index, and get that filled out, and you'll get exclusive early access to to the report when it comes out in a couple of months' time. So please do take a look at that. And yeah, the final thing I wanted to mention was hopefully you've enjoyed today's events, but as always at NBS, we continue to run lots and lots of online events and webinars covering all aspects of specification, product information and marketing and so on. A big one to mention that we've got upcoming at the end of September is our Construction Leaders Summit, which is our 6-monthly conference, all online. It's a half-day digital event. The title is Building Better, and we're going to be focusing very heavily on sustainability and BIM and how the industry needs to change going forward. Got some fantastic speakers lined up for that, so please do take a look. And if you enjoyed today's session and you are a construction manufacturer, please do look out for more marketing masterclasses that we've got coming up. So we're looking to do a topic specifically on sustainable marketing for manufacturers. That will be running sometime in October, and one on search engine optimization, SEO, in November. So all of these linking back to what I was talking about at the beginning about how you can kind of reach specifiers in the right places in the right way across the kind of timeline of information as they need it. And we've got a ton more webinars and recordings on the website, so please do take a look. And I think that's everything that I had to mention. Just leaves me to say thanks again to Ros and Liam from Think Tank. If you don't know Think Tank, please do take a look at their website. All aspects of marketing and PR, particularly in construction, but in many other industries as well. So please do take a look. And if you'd like to look any of us up on LinkedIn, please do. And we look forward to connecting with you. So we'll leave it at that. Thanks again, everyone, for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Goodbye.
you. Bye.